Chapter 1. Corruption has its roots far back in time. God's prophet, Idris Enoch, Akhenaton's message, the religion of Aten, the sages of the Greeks. God's prophet, Idris Enoch, peace be upon him, was the first of Adam's sons to be given the prophethood after Adam. Historians assert that Idris, peace be upon him, lived his life calling upon people to worship, unify, and integrate God. He also called for asceticism, love, justice, and charity, and he is the first to know cosmic science, geology, mathematics, and many of the languages of the people of the earth. The teachings of Idris, peace be upon him, are known from the remains that were discovered and especially his ring with which he used to gird himself. Some scholars allege that he was present 6,000 years ago. Among the achievements that we found for God's prophet Idris, peace be upon him, we know of the call for pure monotheism, worshiping only one God. Say, He is Allah, the one and only, Allah, the eternal absolute. He begetteth not, nor is he begotten, and there is none like unto him. This Quranic surah was known to the ancient Egyptians at the dawn of their civilization, at the call of an intelligible messenger. The Egyptians through the ages were not void of calls for unification. We know for sure of the call of Yusuf and Musa, peace be upon them. It was stated in some reports that Ibrahim, peace be upon him, had visited Egypt, and he must have called upon the Egyptians to adopt the creed of monotheism. But it seems clear that the deviation of the priests started right from the very beginning. The scholar, Maspero, says that the old remains indicate that each monk in the time of the first cognomina had his own gods. Those gods were divided into different groups: gods of the dead, gods of the elements, and the solar gods. The priests turned the worship of one god into deity, which they claimed for some things and animals, and they changed the elements of the faith of monotheism into imaginary myths. Some scholars say that the distortion began with the quarrels between Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt and the continuing wars between them. The priests, who were the philosophers and thinkers of that time, needed to unite the people of Upper and Lower Egypt under one banner, and they invented a religious philosophy with which they misled King Mina I to make him think that the two gods, Horus and Seti, had settled into his body. And their devil inspired them to invent the Trinity, and they told King Mina that the spirit of the god Horus has three branches. The first was the low spirit that settles in the pharaoh of the age, which would then pass to his successor and flood him with its enshrined holiness. The second was the supreme spirit ruling in the heavens and the earth. And the third was the spirit that perishes in the body of the dead pharaoh, which gives advice to the living pharaoh. In the time of King Mina, when the rule of Upper and Lower Egypt was unified, the people of Egypt were also convinced of this faith and started to idolize the king. Then the priests changed Trinity to cosmic ninth, starting with Osiris the father, Horus the son, and Isis the mother, and they are all related to one. The second Trinity is Atun, Re, and Amun, and the third Trinity, Tit, Nut, and Shu. These names show the visible forces of nature that are effective in the change of things: water, air, and sun. The priests gave these things the capacity of divinity. They conferred the qualities of sanctification upon them, and so offerings had to be given to them. After this slander against God and misleading the king and the people, blessings became abundant to the people, as well as offerings to the priests, and everybody was happy. The philosophy of the priests was blended with religion, and so they added philosophical information to religion. They called upon the elite and the common people to believe in such information, which became part of their faith. The prayers of the Egyptians were directed to the Trinity and to the cosmic nine. Thus, polytheism and idolatry were rooted in the hearts of the people. With the passage of years, they kept introducing the names of gods, and they made statues for them, so much so that the people who came after the rule of the priests thought that those symbolic statues were gods and worshipped them. As for the sanctification of animals by the ancient Egyptians, historians' statements differ on the issue that stimulated them to do so. Some say, the animals were not worshipped because they were gods, but because they were symbols of the gods. Each of their gods had a symbol of its own. Tut was symbolized as the head of a cattle egret. Amun, the god of Thebes, is symbolized by the head of a ram, and Memphis was symbolized as the head of a calf. The animal may be sacred in one place, but not sacred in another. The crocodile, which was worshipped in Thebes, was chased and killed in another place. The priests fabricated lies to the people and told them that animals like the crocodile or the bull were holy animals that were given the knowledge of the unseen, and they could predict the future, and the spirit of the gods was placed into them. In this matter, they have stories and legends invented by the imagination of those who had perpetrated them, as they were instigated by their false illusion and their corrupt fancy. They dressed illusion in the garment of truth and reality. Such illusion is in no way related to logic, nor linked to it by any reason. This intellectual corrupt deviation has nothing to do with the first teachings of the ancient Egyptian faith, which called for the worship of one God, and the belief in the last day, the day of reckoning. The Book of the Dead contains that which eliminates the doctrine of solutions. It says, the soul that goes to the other world does not come back. The priests used the impact of magic on the minds of the people, and so they brought offerings to the temples which went to the priests, and their calls to the gods were in vain. And as it is said, the wolf guards the sheep. It is known that the most profitable trade is the trade in religion, and examples of that are too numerous. History tells us that the priests of pharaonic temples were too wealthy, and that no one was equal to them in wealth except the kings.